so it's bringing this passion back into me where I'm like, I really do love what I do. And it would be really hard for me to just stop.
Welcome back to Meet Bridget, a show that sheds light on the often untold teenage and young adult stories of successful women from all types of backgrounds and in all sorts of careers. This show is an extension of our confidence coaching service for young women. I'm Asha Gabriel, and I co-host this show alongside my best friend and Meet Bridget COO, Kashia Rosenberg. This is season 4 of Meet Bridget, and today I'm so excited to sit down with my sister-in-law, Jessica Gabriel. Jessica is a hairstylist for 18 years, and she's the founder and owner of the Balcony Salon in Corona del Mar for the last 6 years. Jess was a Tony and Guy stylist, and now she has 6 stylists working under her in her salon. And she is the mother of the most adorable little 1-year-old in the world. I'm so excited to sit down with you today, Jess. I feel like this is really fun because we're doing it in person. A lot of times we remotely record. But I, over the years, have been just so impressed by you and the way that you manage to really, you're a full-blown business owner now, and you're managing several other people while also being an amazing hairstylist yourself. So I just thought it'd be so fun to start at the beginning and really break down your career path, what inspired you and what's kept you committed to this for a while now.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me.
Well, we always like to start, and this will be fun too, because it's I know some about your childhood and your upbringing, but I feel like in this setting we get, I've had friends on the podcast where it's we've talked about our childhoods, but in this setting, we just kind of get a different angle at things sometimes. So I'd love for you to just take us back to your childhood. You grew up in San Diego.
Yeah, I grew
tell
up
me,
in...
tell me a little bit about it.
So I grew up in North County, San Diego, in Vista, California. And I grew up with a very loving family. My parents were happily married. They had me and my brother. We were very... active. We were a very active family. My dad was a workaholic. He had a very good work ethic. And my mom was a stay-at-home mom. And she always was ever since I was born.
So your brother's older or younger?
He's younger.
Younger. What's the age difference between the two of you?
He's 3 years younger.
3 years younger.
Yeah.
Did your parents know they were they had the two of you and they wanted to, and that was kind of by design, or how was sort of the dynamic of your family set up?
Well, I think, we grew up with enough. My parents gave us enough, but we didn't have everything. And so my parents had a boy and a girl, and my mom, I think she wanted more. My mom comes from a family of 10. And so I grew up with a lot of family around all the time, tons of cousins. And my mom always wanted one more, but I think my dad was just kind of we can have a sustainable lifestyle with just 2 kids.
Yeah.
So I grew up, we didn't have everything, but we had enough, and it was perfect for us.
Yeah. Tell me about your dad's work. What did he do, and kind of what was his schedule like, and how did you perceive that when you were younger?
So my dad worked at the San Onofre power plant, and he worked there for about 35 years. That's actually where my parents met, playing volleyball on the beach down there. They both worked there.
Cute. I didn't know that.
And he sometimes worked night shift and sometimes worked day shift. So he had multiple different types of jobs there because he worked there for so long. And sometimes he was gone throughout the entire night, and he worked hard. He worked hard for our family as the sole breadwinner, and he did a lot. And then he eventually retired. Gosh, I don't even know. Maybe 6, 7, 10 years ago. I don't know.
Yeah.
But after that, he kind of wasn't done working because it just was always ingrained in him.
Yeah.
And so then he actually started his passion was sharpening knives. And so he started a knife sharpening business out of a Mercedes Sprinter van, which is kind of before it was the cool thing to do.
Yeah.
And he went around to, actually hair salons and restaurants and people's homes, and he sharpened knives and scissors. And I told him, I was if you're going to do this, you need to learn how to sharpen my shears, because I pay, every month,
sure.
a good amount of money to get them sharpened, and it'd be nice if you could just do it.
Yeah.
So he actually took a week and traveled around the East Coast and learned from some really cool people. And he learned, because it's not easy to sharpen shears.
Yeah.
And I'm also left-handed. So that's a whole different thing.
Yeah.
You
So you
know?
probably have to get yours like really specifically from.
Yeah. And the blade goes in one direction. It doesn't go in two directions like regular knives do. So that was his passion. So he did that for a long time. And he just recently, about 2 years ago, sold that. And now he's officially retired.
Yeah.
But he, is in his 60s, and he just kind of just continued to work his entire life.
Yeah. I can imagine after like having that work ethic and that schedule and just the consistency of work, that retiring can kind of just be, I mean, my own parents retired recently, and they were, my mom was like, I'm excited obviously, but like a little bit nervous.
Yeah.
It's such a big change, and how do you go from being so busy to suddenly, like, obviously there's things to do, but it's a different pace and mentality.
Totally.
So to kind of go into something else or like pursue a passion project is so great, because then it's, a way to keep going, but into something that you really, enjoy.
Yeah.
And I mean, I love that it like full circle,
I know.
he was helping you too.
Yeah.
Okay. So you said your parents met playing volleyball on the beach.
Yes.
Okay. So your mom, why were they both on the beach? What was your mom doing
my
at the time?
mom came out here from Wisconsin with her sister and brother. She, out of 10, 3 of them lived out here in California. And my mom ended up working there with some friends just as like a secretary, I think.
Yeah.
But she just did like some office work.
Yeah.
And met my dad on the beach. They were doing like a after work beach party.
Yeah.
And that's where they met. And they were both living in San Clemente at the time. And then they kind of got together, got married, moved to Vista, and started a family.
That's so cool. Did your mom, when she was working, did she all along want to like work to become a stay-at-home mom and raise children, or was it something that she kind of arrived at after she had you guys?
I think that's always been like my mom's passion.
Yeah.
I mean, seeing her with my son now and seeing her with, my other cousin's kids, and she's just always had a passion for being with kids and being a mom, and it's always been her thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you guys, I mean, you're 3 years apart. You grew up with a brother. What was that dynamic like? Like having a brother, you didn't have sisters, he didn't have brothers. Were you guys really close growing up?
Yes and no. Like I think we hit a point in time when like we had separate friends.
Yeah.
Like we grew up having the same friends, and we grew up in a household where you just ran out the front door and ran to the neighbor's house, and you didn't call them or anything. So our neighborhood had a lot of younger kids. So we kind of grew up with the same group. And then, I went off to high school and he was still in middle school. And we went to a school where it was kindergarten to 8th grade. And by the time my brother got into middle school, he moved to a different school closer because I was in high school at a different school. And so we kind of separated there. But when I was a senior, he came in as a freshman. And so we got really close then.
Yeah.
Because everyone already knew who he was and knew who his older sister was. And so that was a really fun year for him. But yeah, I mean, it kind of went back and forth, like, because we didn't have a ton in common, but we did have a lot of mutual friends growing up.
Yeah. I mean, I think it is so fun as a younger sibling to like, especially for high school, to enter and have sort of a foundation set for you is such an advantage for a younger sibling. I think it's fun for the older sibling too, because it's sort of like, gives you a way to
like a purpose. Like,
I think
there.
Like in general, big siblings, like, I mean, I'm even observing it in my older daughter, this pride in like showing the way a little bit.
Yeah.
So to be able to do that for your brother sounds so fun. I mean, but I've met your brother. I know your brother, and he is like a giant, very tall dude. So I feel like every time I'm reminded that he is younger than you, it makes me giggle a little bit because, now it just seems it's so funny. Like the years between you get smaller and smaller as you get older.
Yeah.
Right. So when you were like a child, as young as you could remember, what were like the kind of things that you were into? What were you not into? Did you have any like quirks or unique things?
So I went to a performing arts school, so I knew that I was, and this was from kindergarten to 8th grade, and I always knew that I liked it. Like I always, you did a little bit of band, you did a little bit of like theater, you were in art class, you kind of did dance, you kind of did it all. So like the arts part of it definitely came natural for me, and it was fun. And then I played a lot of sports, a lot of sports.
Did you have a favorite?
I played volleyball.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just being so tall.
You're also
like,
we're all very tall. So
yeah.
for a little bit of background for anyone that doesn't like already know about our family and our like husbands and the whole setup.
Yeah.
So my husband Andrew is the eldest of 3 boys. Jessica is married to Greg, who is the youngest of 3 boys. And then Nick is a middle child of the 3 boys, and he's married to our sister-in-law, Stephanie. And the funny thing is that like all 3 of us are very tall women. All the guys are relatively tall.
Yeah.
And we're all like, for girls, I think on the
Yeah,
much
they all
taller
very
side.
tall women. Yeah.
But it's funny when we're around each other because I really feel like we're all pretty eye to eye. And we all really, really genuinely like each other, which I think is rare. We recently were at we're on a family trip for our mother and father-in-law's 50th wedding anniversary.
Yeah, 50 years.
And it was also interesting that we all reflected on the fact that our own parents were also in like long, successful marriages.
Yeah.
And how that kind of impacted our perspectives and how we approached marriage ourselves. So it's a fun family setup for sure. But like at the same time, our families are also different, you know, in so many ways. But having that kind of fundamentally in common, I feel like makes it for such a fun like sisters-in-law situation.
It is fun. I love it.
Yeah. Okay, so going back to you, art school, you were playing volleyball. In school, like, did you like school? Were you popular? Did you have a lot of friends, a few friends? Did you enjoy school? What was that like for you?
I wasn't very advanced academically, let's just put it that way. I think I focused more on playing sports and all that. I don't think that like my career path was going to come out of school, which I don't think I knew that at a young age, but I wasn't like the most book smart. I was kind of just passing by with like okay grades, and it was like it was happening, you know? But I wasn't like AP honors or anything.
Yeah.
So
did you feel like was there struggle in that, or were you kind of like not as attached to the idea of having to do well in
I think it was
school?
a bit of both.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I always like tried really hard, but it just never really came very natural for me. As far as being popular, I had a good group of friends, but I don't think I was like super popular. When I was in middle school, that's when I grew and I was taller than all the boys, and I think that was like a bit intimidating and for me, you know, like not necessarily for like other people, but was like the tallest in the grade for a while, and I think that's where I like really attached to sports and stuff more than like I don't think it like took away from me being like more academic, but it just never came supernatural for me. So,
did you have like a favorite, if there were like a subject that you enjoyed, did you have something you kind of gravitated more toward regardless of how you were like performing in it?
Yeah, I mean, once I was in high school, I think I really liked history. History was always like something that I loved. Like I just loved, I could pick up on like the numbers of the years and like what was happening and like different like stages of like the wars and stuff. I think that was like, that's what I really, really liked.
Yeah. Would you say that you still kind of like that kind of just historical stuff when you're reading, or even just like the way that you see politics in the world and everything? Is that kind of carried through?
I mean, as much as I like a psychological thriller, I am always reading about like World War II, and that's like my favorite shows to watch. Gravitate to those movies and books all the time. Yeah.
I love hearing about how like these little things when you're kids just kind of like sort of continue and they manifest in different ways later. But yeah, that's really interesting. Was your brother, as he was coming through school, was it like similar with him in school, or was it different?
It was pretty similar. Yeah, he struggled a bit in school. So maybe that's just the way it was for us. But yeah, he struggled. I mean, he ended up going to college. My parents both really wanted us to go to college. They really did, because they both didn't get the opportunity to go. My dad eventually did graduate, once we were a little older. He went back to school and graduated, but my parents didn't really get the opportunity. My mom coming from one of 10, it was tough. So they really wanted that for us. And my brother did. My brother went to UC Santa Cruz and graduated, and he's now in the Navy. He got a degree in environmental science, so he's kind of like sticking with that path. He loves it. Yeah, for me, it just what I don't think it was really in my cards, but my parents, they really wanted it for us, because they were giving us the opportunity to be able to go to college.
Yeah.
And I think when I found my passion of doing hair, it just wasn't in the books for me.
Yeah.
It wasn't like the direction that I was going to go. I went to college. I went to Miracosta, and I just knew what I wanted to do. It didn't last very long for me.
I think that's so cool and such an important point and experience to share, because as much as, now more than ever, I think that, we talk with our teen girls, coaching and everything, there's so much pressure around getting your grades in the right place, like doing your college applications the right way and everything. And don't get me wrong, there's a great number of careers that require a college degree, so I think that's a valid pressure or thing to encourage a teenager to do. But I think there's also something very important to be said about when a young person has that gut feeling that like the thing that is right for me, the thing that's calling me, isn't necessarily one that accommodates a 4-year college degree. Maybe it is, I need to go right into this kind of training, and that's where my interest is, that's where my heart is. I think that, that's also completely valid, and actually really, I think it's a really amazing thing to be able to have an inner voice at that age and be able to resist the pressures and the kind of the track that a lot of people might be touting as like the right way or the best way or the most impressive way. To be able to like listen to your inner compass, I think is like a really, really special thing, and something that, even being a mother of daughters, regardless of what, if my kid is like, I want to be a rocket scientist, I'm going to be like, yeah, here you go to college, but like hoping for them that they can be in tune with the things that they're interested in, and having the self-awareness to realize that like, okay, this is who I am, this is what I'm connected to, and these are the reasons why. It's not to go to college so I can impress others or do the things that other people expect of me, or like not go to college because I want to be cool, like not doing things for other people, but being like, this is what I want. Okay, what is the path to get there? And regardless of what it is, it just doesn't matter. It's like you're on the trajectory that you're following your compass for.
And it's really hard because society these days, well, when I was like in my 20s, like kind of becoming a woman, becoming older, it was kind of like, where did you go to school?
Yeah.
Where'd you go to school? And you really had to have the courage to be like, I didn't.
Yeah.
But look at me and what I'm doing. So it's very impressive, not saying to like, but it's very impressive to go to college and get your degree. And that's the direction that a lot of people should strive to go in, if that's the direction you're going in, but it's not necessarily the direction that you need to go.
And, whether I love the story about your dad going back to school, after not being able to do it at first, and like realizing, for some people, like for me, I always, like I ended up going back to school to get my MBA, but I didn't, after pursuing my MBA, I'm not working in a career right now that requires an MBA. But I did know, like, I loved school. I was a person that was like crazy. I loved the school environment. I loved the college environment. I loved learning. And I always had on my heart that I wanted to go back to like get a professional degree. I wanted to go back into higher education. So that was something that I just followed. And it's like, okay, it doesn't have to be on other people's timing or for the purpose of other people's ideas or use, but like your dad, it was on his mind that he wanted to accomplish that, and he went back and he did it, even though it wasn't in the conventional timing, that he might have expected in the first place. So I love kind of reframing, because I think there's so much external pressure on especially young people, not only from our own family units or teachers or counselors or other friends, but then also like the internet, and trying to compare to what we think is the right way to do things.
Well, there's multiple ways to be successful.
Yes. Yeah.
People always think that it has to happen in this like small amount of time.
Yeah.
And it really doesn't. I know people who have started careers in their 30s, switched careers, gone back to school.
Yeah.
There's multiple ways to be successful in this life.
There are.
Yeah.
I can't wait to get more into how you realized that hair was something you're passionate about. I mean, I think it's pretty amazing that you have been doing it for 18 years.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And I think it's a very lucky and awesome thing to be able to choose something that early and then also stick with it and still feel that way about it. But, because we've also had people on the podcast where I was like, well, I didn't know, so I tried this one thing and that was wrong. Or like, I really thought it was going to be this thing and then I failed at it and it took me this way, and I think all those paths are valid, and it's fun to share one where it was like you had that gut feeling early and you went with it and it was right and it has been right. Not to say it won't, who knows, like that could change. And it sounds like we'll get into even how your schedule has changed now that you're a salon owner versus being a full-time stylist. So, okay. So tell me a little bit about, was it high school when you first realized your love for hair? Or was it even earlier than that?
So actually I wasn't really into doing hair. I actually didn't even really know what I wanted to do. And my friends were always like dyeing their hair out of the box. And I was always like there and interested. But my mom was always like, you don't do that. You don't dye your hair. You're probably never going to dye your hair. She's like, I didn't dye my hair till I was 30. You're not going to do that. So I was always like, tiptoe around the fact, and I was always there. Like my friends would be like, oh, today I'm gonna be blonde, today I'm gonna be black, it's like all these different things. And I wasn't like doing my Barbie's hair. I mean, maybe I was, but I wasn't like
it wasn't
that
like
into it.
Oh, this is my
passion. Barbie. But like, and I would always go get my hair done at like Supercuts, and you hate it growing up, but it was like that sort of thing. And then there was this little salon. It was off this beaten path, but it was like the go-to salon. And it's where you went for like prom and homecoming and all this stuff. And then for my senior pictures, so I guess I was like a junior in high school. My mom was like, I begged her. I was like, can I please get my hair done? Everyone's doing this. Everyone's doing it. Everyone's doing it. They've been doing it for a long time. Why can't I go do it? So she was like, okay, we'll go do it. You'll go to the girl. It was at this salon called Winters in Vista. And it was off this dirt road, and you parked in this dirt parking lot. It's like so cute and small, and like it was like this old wooden house. And I went and got my highlights done for the first time, and it was like a movie. She like turned me around in the chair. And I like looked in the mirror and I was like, oh my God. I just, something like a wave came over me, and I was just like stars. And it was like, how did she make me feel this way? And I was like, that sparked something inside of me. So I left. When you leave the hair salon, you're just like looking in the rearview mirror like 100 times. Like, do I like it? Do I not like it? Do I not like it? And I just was like glued to that rearview mirror. And I was like, how did she make me feel that way? So for me, it started because it's not that I wanted to know how to do those highlights. I wanted to know how to make someone feel the way that I felt when she turned me around in the chair, and I looked in the mirror and I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like a totally different person.
I think that's such a cool point, because, if it were just like, oh, I was interested in like this kind of cut or this kind of thing, that's an interest. But I feel like you hear passion when you're saying like, I wanted to know like the feeling behind it. And like, that there was something powerful that you had that experience yourself. And you wanted to kind of learn more about it that way. I think that it's funny, like working with a lot of teen girls, most of when we've done our own surveys and asked about like the careers that interest them, most often the careers that were at the top of most of the girls' lists were careers of people who they had an important experience with. One really interesting group that we surveyed like this was like a group of teen moms, and almost every mom in that group put neonatal nurse at the top of their list of careers they were interested in. And it's like, because they had that, they were impacted by somebody, just like you, when you turned around in the chair, you're like, wow, this woman impacted you, transformed you really, even though, I mean, they say it's just hair, but any girl or guy, you know, that has had like a really amazing salon moment or transformation realizes that it's like when your hair is working for you, or it's like a change that you needed, like it can really change everything for you. What's that like? Is it Chanel?
It was like you cut off your hair cuts off, like people always say, like when you cut your hair off, it's like cutting off energy that's been like stuck to you for a long time. But I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And now I can't think of
There's
it.
a quote.
Yeah.
We'll link it in our show notes.
Yeah.
I think it was Chanel, but it was like a woman that like cuts her hair is about to like
change her life
or something like that.
Yeah.
But it's true. I think that it's like, it is important, and it's on your head. It's the frame of your face, you know? So it really is part of, you know, how people perceive you and how you perceive yourself.
Yeah.
So I love that. When you had that moment and you're like, wow, this is interesting to me. What did you do next? Like, how long did that moment kind of stick with you? And what were like the first steps that you took to like pursue that interest?
I obviously went back to the hairdresser and got my hair done again and started asking her more about like, you know, how does this work? You know, what do you do? Like, you know, not necessarily like, but not with tools, but I'm like, how does this work? Like in general, like, how do I become a hairstylist? You know, like she's like, okay, go to school, you go to this school. This is the school I went to, and you pass a test and, you know, all this stuff. I also at the time my cousin had married a girl in the business, and she was just opening up her own salon at the time down in San Diego. And so that was kind of fun because I got to talk to her about it a lot too. And when I was graduating high school, she whispered in my ear, my cousin's wife.
Yeah.
And she was like, you know, if you really want to be a hairdresser, you can be really successful if you stick with it. And I was just like, okay. So then I kind of had like my hairdresser mentor and my cousin mentor. And so they kind of helped me through it. But my parents were like, no, this is not the direction you're going to go in. Like, I think you can do a little better. And I was like, really? You're like, come on. And so that's when I actually ended up like trying to go to college. And I still was like, no, this is really what I want to do. So I got it all set up, all ready to go. And it's like, Mom, I really want to go to beauty school. And she was like, okay. My dad's like, okay, but if you don't pass, you're going to pay us back every single penny. And I'm like, okay.
Which is like so much pressure, but also kind of a gift because you're like, I'm going to pass this.
Yeah. So I ended up going to school.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I went to like a really old school, cosmetology school. There was no like name behind it. Now they have like all these names behind all these schools. And it was just pretty, just like cutthroat, down to the point. And I went and I met my best friends there. I had a great group of girls. We had so much fun. We probably had like too much fun. And you're there for like a little less than a year.
Okay.
So I went like full time, and it was great. I mean, I passed the first time, and I immediately just started working.
Yeah. Okay. So this is so interesting because I feel like those moments where we're like, and we have a different perspective now, right? Because we are parents.
Yeah.
Really, your job as a parent is to like keep your kid safe. You know, for so many years, it's just keeping them safe and healthy and happy if you can get that too. Yeah. But like safety is number one. And I feel like a lot of times parents give kids or check their interests or whatever out of concerns for like safety and well-being, where it's like, okay, well, maybe you should go, you know, pursue a job that's like going to get you this salary, or go to college because that's security, you know, and like as soon as, you know, we're leaving high school, we're going to college and stuff, it's like our parents realize that they can't give us like physical security anymore because we're moving out and doing things. So then they want to maybe, I feel like without realizing it, a lot of parents kind of try to guide you towards security in other forms.
Yeah.
You know, so having to have that resistance from your parents, I think feel like a lot of pressure at the time. But I think if you have that clarity of mind where you're like, but no, I actually really do want this. And being able to have that moment with your parents where it's like, no, you should do this. And you turn around and you're like, I hear you, but I really actually want this.
Yeah.
I think is a really powerful thing for a parent to hear, but also a really good test of your own commitment to something, you know? I love that you had such a positive experience in school too. So it's cosmetology school for someone who has never even heard about that. what's like the day-to-day in cosmetology school? Do you pick hair right away, or is it like you're doing makeup, you're doing all the things?
So yeah, cosmetology school is just hair.
Okay.
And what you do is you do like it's been so long since I've been in school, but if you go to just a traditional school, which I'm sure it's pretty similar now, you go in the first couple hours, it's a full day. So it's like an 8-hour day. And I think they do offer nighttime, but I think it takes you a little bit longer. So the first couple hours, you're learning like fundamentals. You're learning how to cut hair. You're learning how to apply color. And you're doing this all in a doll head. And then the second half of the day, you're actually working on actual clients. And what we would have is we would have like the retirement home, like old folks home. They'd like bus all the women in. Aww. And we'd be doing like all these old ladies. We had like such good connections with them by the time that we left. But
so cute.
But you are practicing hair and nails.
Okay.
Stuff that you would never do in a salon, but you're not doing the facial side.
Okay.
But you're doing hair and nails, and you have to do a certain amount while you're there.
Okay.
So you had to do like 150 haircuts, and you had to do like 50 wet sets where you like roll these old ladies' hair and put them under the dryer and take it out and then brush it out. And you had to do like 50 pedicures.
Yeah.
And so there was a list of how much stuff you had to do.
Yeah.
And then on top of it, you're testing every day to learn like words of like cuticle, the hair follicle, and stuff like that, and then sanitation. And so I mean it's a big process, but I mean it was good, but I didn't learn any technique.
You know what's so interesting is like I feel this way about real estate also. It's like when you go to take even like your license exam, it's like obviously you need to know all those things, and it's like especially the parts about like the law and like the really safety things and stuff. Like you need to know what you learn in your real estate exam, but really like you can't go out and then be like, this is how I'm going to sell a home. Like I distinctly remember like the first time I was like, okay, wait, so I'm a person that like studies, like I could memorize the entire exam if I needed to, but it's like the practical stuff, especially like careers, like where, with hair, it's like you're going to be in the dynamics of a salon. You're going to be apprentice to someone. You're going to, however your career goes, it's like, it's all that soft stuff of like learning to work with other people and how to manage relationships and get clients, maintain clients. It's not what you're tested on in those kind of schools or, exams. So this is interesting to me about like when you finish school, how does like licensing work in that area? Is you get the license after you finish cosmetology school?
No, so you go and take a test.
Okay.
So you take a test. It used to be like 5 hours long, and it would be like a 3-hour practical and like a 2-hour like multiple choice.
Okay.
Now I think they've totally taken the practical out after COVID.
Interesting.
Like you just don't even work on someone.
Weird.
Yeah, I know. But I guess it's just the way it is now.
Yeah.
And then you get your license if you pass.
Okay.
You have to pass both.
Yeah.
And then they hand you a license, then you can literally just go do whatever life takes you. So, but they didn't teach us. I mean, they taught us how to like hold scissors and cut hair, but they didn't teach us like what is the newest, coolest bang to cut, or how do you do this and that. So that's what you're kind of on your own after that.
Okay. So what was like your first step out of school then? What did you do?
So I went and worked in Ulta.
Okay.
And like an Ulta beauty supply store.
Yeah.
And they had a hair salon in the back. I worked at the Forum in Encinitas.
Okay.
And I worked there for about 3 years. And I worked there with my best friend, who I was in beauty school with.
Yeah.
And we learned a ton. We learned a lot of fundamentals of color. They gave us a lot of education. We learned how to build the clientele. I learned a lot, but it wasn't enough for me.
Yeah.
I was just so curious.
I feel like that's a good way, going under like a big company. I mean, we've had a lot of entrepreneurs on too that like have never worked in like under some corporate umbrella, but there are like perks to that in that there's like the education is usually pretty like formal and comprehensive depending on where you're at. I feel like I did a couple jobs while I was modeling for Paul Mitchell, and they do these like, I had no idea about this like world of like hair under these like big companies. I did Paul Mitchell, and then I also did Aveda,
Yeah.
and they had these big corporate where they had like all their
Oh, it's
stylists
cutthroat.
come
Yeah.
and like the models, like they'd have us. Thankfully, I wasn't one of the models that like they literally had these like master stylists do live haircuts like on a stage, and everybody was like watching. And there was one of the models that like they literally like basically shaved her head
Yep.
on stage, and I was just like, oh my god. I was like, I think I was up there modeling like a conditioning product or something, but I was so fascinated because I was like, oh wow, this company. I'm like, who are the people coming to these big hair shows? And I'm like, oh, these are stylists, you know, that
Yeah.
are affiliated with one of these companies or went through training within one of them, and they have salons all over the world, and they're literally coming here to learn the newest products, the newest techniques, to be inspired by these like master stylists.
Yeah.
Did you have like through Ultra, obviously they were giving you training and
Yeah,
stuff.
it was
Were you aware of like the hair world at that point?
so a little bit. So as Ulta, they were pretty friendly. Let's
Yeah.
just put it that way. It
Yeah.
was a pretty friendly style of training. But I had a good family friend who owned the Tony and Guy up here at Fashion Island. And Ulta just wasn't going to cut it for me. And I needed to do more. I was just so curious on something bigger and better. So I came up and I interviewed with the Tony and Guy up here. And it was pretty cutthroat. They were like, what do you want to do? Do you want to cut or do you want to color? And I was like, I want to do both. I've been doing both for 3 years. This is what I want to do. And they're like, oh, no, no, no. You're going to do one or the other and you're going to assist for 2 years. And I was like, oh, but
Okay.
I've been doing hair and I do both and I'm good. And they're like, no, like you're going to go through the program just like everyone else and you need to pick. So I was like, well, I like the finished product. So I picked cutting because you do that after color and then you blow dry their hair and that's when you turn them around in the chair and they look in the mirror and they're like, oh, I love it.
Yeah.
So that's what I picked just because of that reason pretty much. And it was intense. I went through I think I finished in about a year, a little under a year and a half, their assistant program. But it changed my life and I owe my entire career to that because if I wouldn't have done that, I probably wouldn't be where I am right now. But it was intense. You wrote down every step-by-step haircut. You had a model every Monday night, and they wanted hair down to their butt, and they wanted it cut into a pixie cut. And you had to find someone who wanted to do that almost every Monday.
Wow.
Long hair, cut short, very short. And my mom had short hair for a really long time because if you don't have that model, you fail.
Yeah.
And you had to show up every Monday with that model that wanted. I was in the parking lot of Fashion Island begging to pay people, can I please cut your hair? I mean, they had people that were like set up, ready. Okay, they need this haircut. They want to keep it going. They want a free haircut. It was good haircuts, but I was crying all the time. And they told me I had a stylist who I love to death now, but she told me, she's like, if you don't cry through this program, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
It's not worth it to you. You're not going to learn anything. And so it was cutthroat at the time. And when you were assisting, you stood in the tile square and you didn't move. You stood and stared for hours at what they were doing and how they were cutting. But I worked under those stylists who were on the stage, who were leaving on the weekends and going to Paris Fashion Week, leaving on the weekends, going to New York to go do the models, And so it was a really cool experience.
So cool.
And I honestly owe all of my talent to that because that's where I learned everything.
And really leveled up.
Yeah.
I feel like early when we were even like getting to know each other, we were at dinner and I think we ran into someone that you worked under.
Yeah, Lindsay Baker.
Was it at Tony and Guy, that person?
Yes. So Lindsay Baker, she was my teacher.
Okay.
On my assistant training nights.
Yeah.
And usually you go through all these stylists. There was say 10 top stylists and you work for each of them for about 2 months. I got through 4 of them and then I hit Lindsay Baker and she was like, oh, no, no, no. She's like, you're sticking with me. And I was like, oh no. But I stuck with her and I ended up staying with her and we kind of broke the mold a little bit. And she was like, you're sticking with me. So I assisted her for a long time and she was great. She taught me so much. And now we're really good friends.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So when you you complete that training, what happens next? Were you going to go to another salon or what happened after you kind of completed their training?
So I worked with them for a bit. And then the owners, Laurel Shrico, she came to, well, she came to everyone, but she also came to me because, you know, we were really good family friends. And she was like, I know you've only worked here for about 2 years, but I'm leaving and I'm going to go open up another salon down the street. And she's like, I'd love for you to come with me. And I was like, well, you are the reason why I am up here in Orange County, and you are the reason why I am where I am. So, of course, I'll follow you. So I followed her, and they opened up Platino Salon and Suites over by the airport. And they even leveled up my career more. They sent me, you know, to teacher training to become a stylist on stage. And they let me have an assistant program to teach assistants what to do. And they had tons of amazing education. And she was just an amazing stylist. Everyone wanted to work for her, and they still do. And she's in her 70s still cutting hair. And
Awesome.
Yeah, people like love her. So she was just someone that you really wanted to work for and follow.
Yeah.
And so I worked there for about 5 years, and they lit a fire under me because I was just working as a commissioned stylist for a long time. And then they came to me one day and they go, you need to go to the next step. It's time for you to move on and like booth rent and run your own business, you know, have your client. Yeah.
Before we go, so commission stylist to booth rent.
Yes.
For someone who does not know anything about this world, explain the difference between those two.
Okay. So commission stylist is someone who is either has your own clients or is given clients, and then you get a percentage of how much that service was worth.
Okay.
So it's split up by percentage, like 60-40 or, you know, 50-50, however it is.
Kind of like real estate.
Yes. So you get a commission,
Yeah.
pretty much. You get paid, and then the salon gets paid. A booth rent is a flat fee that you pay once a week, but then you get 100% of the profits that you make. So you pretty much rent a chair at a salon, and you get to make and work on your own schedule.
At your own rates.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah.
So they challenged you
so
to
they
like,
did. And,
do that.
And I was so upset because I was so comfortable.
Yeah.
You know, I was so comfortable doing what I was doing. I'd go to work, but I didn't necessarily have like a full clientele to where I could do booth rent. You know, I was still banking on the fact that like, oh, someone would walk in the door, but I'd been here the longest, so I get them first. Yeah. Or if I'm not there, then someone else gets them. So it's like, it was very comfortable. But I was also very young. I was still like 21, 22 at this point, and I was just nervous. I remember calling my friend. I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I can't afford this. It's a lot of money. You know, I don't have any clients. What am I going to do? But they put a fire under me that they knew that I needed, you know, to move on and, you know, see my career go in a whole different direction.
Well, and it's like that, those moments can sometimes be like, you almost like despise that person for like, oh, I don't want that, you know, like this is uncomfortable. But then you look back and it's like, sometimes like you need these little external, whether it's like an obstacle that's out of your control or someone else, it's like, you got to do this, you know, the things that kind of just really get you out of your comfort zone are the things that like can really take your career to the next level.
Yeah.
So you switched over. Did you stay at Platino doing that?
Platino.
Okay.
For another couple of years. And then I got curious again. And I just was like, okay, what's next? You know, I know how to run my own business during booth rent. Now I want to go on my own.
Yeah.
And I was like, it was really hard to leave there because that was like family.
Yeah.
I was like leaving family to literally just go work on my own. But I needed to see what it was like to move on and have the next step. So I was like, maybe I'll just go work for myself by myself for like a year and just see how I like it. I can always go back, you know, we'll see what happens. And so I went and worked in a salon suite for 3 years, and it was just me in a room. I mean, there were other people around, but it was just me and the client in a room, but I got to design the room the way I wanted it. You know, it was essentially my business.
Yeah. If you're switching from a place like Platino to like a salon suite, how is that set up on the back end?
So you still rent a room.
Okay.
And then you have to design it and set it up yourself. So you like set up the chair and the mirror, and you bring your own products in to sell. You bring your own everything, essentially.
Because I feel like I've seen some of these places like this like lymphatic drainage girl that I've gone to, or it's like she has a room and that her whole business is within that room, but also in that same building there's like there's like 15 of
Yeah,
these suites,
that's exactly
and
how
it's
it
like
is.
just some
Like
real
there's an
estate is
eyelash
set up to
girl,
be
and then
like
there's
a
like a
salon
nail,
place.
and then
Yeah.
there's like massage, and
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, and they're
So
all independent businesses.
all independent
Okay.
businesses. I mean, you pay your own bills, you run your own show,
Yeah. And you're just paying rent to have
it's
that
like
room.
a salon, but like just one person.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
How was that? Did it feel lonely compared to, you had all these like big, group things and trainings and your friends around you and stuff. How was it to like kind of transition? I guess you're still like you're friends with your clients, so it's
Yeah,
like,
so I'm friends with my client. A lot of my clients were like my friends and family.
yeah,
I was well established enough to where like I felt comfortable doing it. Like my friend was like right next door working in
nice.
the suite next door. So you still had the community a little bit, but it kind of took the umbrella away so you could kind of do your own thing.
Mm-hmm.
It took like, I wouldn't say like the roof off over your head, but it was kind of, it just lets you expand a little bit more.
Yeah.
Kind of make your own decisions. There's
And
not
like your
someone
own
watching you all the
brand and
time.
your
Yeah,
schedule and everything.
totally. I
Like,
was kind of able to start my own brand.
yeah.
Like start my own. I wasn't working under someone else anymore.
So what did that, at that point in your career, as a hairstylist, are you an independent contractor the entire time?
When you're doing booth rent, yes.
And so up to that point, you were like an employee.
Yes.
And then once you start booth rent, you become an independent contractor.
Yeah.
Okay. So at this point, then you're like starting to learn, you're doing your own taxes and write-offs and like organizing your business like a proper business.
Yeah.
Had you thought about at this point, like, was it on your mind that you wanted to eventually become a salon owner, or were you sort of just taking each step as it came and like being curious about what's kind of next as you were in that moment?
I think it's both. I think any hairdresser who, has a true passion always wants to kind of own their own salon or always know what it's like.
Yeah.
I think if that's the direction if someone wants to go, going into a salon suite was an amazing experience for me because I got to learn a lot of the back part of owning a salon. I mean, obviously there's a lot more once you actually own a salon, but I think going into a salon suite actually kind of like made me want it more. Mm-hmm. I think every hairstylist kind of has that like in them to be like, oh, I want to be the salon owner. It wasn't my like goal at the time, but it was always in the back of my mind.
Yeah,
like
a little curious.
This is what the next step will be.
It's so funny as like I'm kind of hearing your thought processes and everything. Greg, your husband, is always like, I think one of the things he likes the most about you is that you're super curious.
Yeah.
He's like any little thing, like he's like, Jess has little questions. Like she wants to know. She's like asking about this, she asks about that. It's like, she just is really, her mind's like always kind of working.
I've always been so curious. I think it started like when I was like, I want to know how she made me feel that way. I was just like curious. I was like, this is all just like curiosity. But yes, I am a very curious person.
Yeah.
And I will find out what I need to know. That's
She's like
the funniest
little
part.
detective.
Yeah. I'm like, I will figure it out.
Yeah. I think that's such a gift, and also I think an essential thing for someone that's an entrepreneur, which is really what you are now, and really from the get-go. I think that to be a hairstylist with a trajectory of working on your own is to be an entrepreneur. Okay, so tell me a little bit about that transition to going off on your own after the salon suite. What happened?
So I think I was just ready to go back into a salon where there was like more energy.
Yeah.
It was kind of died out there.
Yeah, a little more upbeat and people moving around and a lot of different chairs going. And
yeah,
that kind of
I wanted
thing.
to be there for like a year.
Okay.
And then I ended up being there for 3. And I was like, okay, like 3 years, like my max.
Yeah.
So I think I started looking into other salons in the area. And the guy who was property managing my house where I was renting, he knew I was a hairdresser. I was doing like some charity work with him. And he called me one day and he said, hey, I have a salon closing. Would you be interested in opening it up? And I was like, oh man, this just kind of fell in my lap.
Yeah.
And I went and looked at it and it was a mess. The last owners had just like ripped everything off the walls, ripped everything out of the ground, ripped all the plumbing out. It's just like, oh no. But the location was amazing. And it was something that I honestly just felt like compelled to. I couldn't turn it up.
Yeah.
And so I kind of took the plans, took the lease, kind of looked it over and took it to my parents. And I was like, hey, I really want to do this, but like, I'm going to need your help. I had a very solid clientele, so I wasn't worried about like that part.
Yeah, you're like the business, like once I can like get this to a
Yeah.
workable place, like the business is already moving. It's not like I'm going to start something from zero
Yeah.
momentum and have to have that kind of leap of
So,
faith.
yeah, I mean, I went to my parents. My dad was like, you know what? You've just over impressed us in your career here. Like, of course, we'll help you out. And they did. And that's kind of where we got started. I mean, it wasn't easy by any means. And yes, the location fell into my lap, but it didn't just fall into place either because we opened a year before COVID. And
Love
that
that.
was a life-changing thing, but we survived
Yeah.
and it was great. So we had a little bit, our first year obviously wasn't like super successful or anything. We had a lot of turnover, but since COVID, I've had all my stylists since then.
So how it works for someone who doesn't really know, again, I always like to kind of break things
Yeah.
down for someone who has no clue about this industry. So in your salon, do you rent out the
Yes.
chairs to other stylists and they kind of
Yeah,
do
so
their own
all my
thing?
stylists are all independent contractors. From the very beginning, from the first girl that ever walked in the door, I said, this is your business. This is your business. I'm just going to give you the space to work. I designed it. I did all this. I'm going to have the space for you to work. I'm going to have the tools for you to work, but this is your business. I don't need to like micromanage you. This is all on you. And I think that's like a good communication that's salon owners should have with their stylists. Like, you shouldn't have to control them at all. They should be able to run their business the way they want to run their business at your salon if they are renting a chair.
I can imagine though that'd probably be a little bit tricky in terms of like finding the right people, because it's like if you're the salon owner, there are going to be times when they're like, oh, my client wants to get their hair cut at 7 p.m. So I'm going to go into the salon and like do their hair. So there are times probably when like your stylists are there without you being there.
Yeah, a lot.
To supervise. You have to trust them. Like if they're running their own businesses, they all have different tools and products and stuff, and knowing that they're not going to kind of like take advantage of the space or other people's stuff. Have you had issues like that in the experience of being a salon owner?
Yeah, of course. Like we've had issues like that, but I think my core girls, like kind of where we're sitting right now with them, it's worked out really well. We've had the off person that's come in, kind of ruffled things up a little bit, but yeah, I mean, you really have to like put a lot of trust in the girls, and you have to find the right people. I mean, you have to interview the right people. You have to make sure they fit. I always let people come when we were like kind of looking for more people. I let them come and I let them work a day to see if they fit in.
Yeah.
More for us than for them.
Yeah.
And my girls have to meet them and we all have to agree. We are a team. My core team, we are a team, and it's worked really well.
In the salon, does everybody, like if someone has a chair, that's there's not like people sharing a chair or anything like that?
So yeah, everyone has their own chair and their own space and their own, their own
all
area.
Their stuff.
But we kind of have an open communication thing where like if no one's there today in that chair, you can go sit in that chair.
Yeah.
Or you can have your client sit in that chair, but you use your own stuff.
Yeah.
Use your own products, use your own tools. That's just hairdresser respect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's probably a whole kind of like, I feel like in any industry, it's like there's sort of a code that's like through your training and stuff. It's like, oh, you don't do that. Like, don't touch my scissors, or shears.
Totally. Yeah.
You call them
scissors.
shears. Yeah. Same. Okay. I think this is super fascinating too. So you think like, oh, just like you cut hair, like scissors. The hairdresser scissors are like a whole different, they're like a chef with their knives, right?
Yeah. Like you don't cut paper with them.
No,
you cut hair and that's it. And if you cut paper, you're like
sharp.
You're technically like putting your knife into the garbage disposal because it like totally ruins
different.
It. Yeah.
So for people that are like doing their kids' hair with their own scissors at home, what's the difference between like scissors that are used to cut paper and scissors that are like actual hairdresser scissors?
It's the way that they're designed, I guess.
Because you were saying like only one side of it moves, right?
Yeah. So
they're like one side kind of swings.
Yeah. So one
We're getting
side
really like in the weeds right here, but
I've
always been interested in it.
We should talk to my dad about this. He could probably give you like a whole breakdown. But if you were to take my left-handed shears and cut them in your right hand, it would not cut at all. It would just bend the hair.
Interesting.
So the blade only goes one way.
Yeah.
And I think that's with like just like paper scissors like that your kids use in school. I think the blade is just straight.
Yeah, I think they're like
the blade is like slanted in hairdressing because when you cut hair, your hair is like a cuticle and you want to cut it straight, so it has to have a slanted. I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah. No, I'm following. I'm following. I'm down in the follicle right now.
It's totally
we're
different.
Zoomed in.
Yeah.
No, because I think there is like I've noticed it, and it's like, well, normal scissors like they will squeeze at the same time. You know, you're doing a squeeze where the hairdresser ones, it's like
one blade is straight and one moves. I probably should know more of this. Actually, this is a really good question.
You know,
I'm gonna
it's fascinating.
Go back into like my school science.
She's gonna be going into like hairdresser history and breaking it down.
I need to learn this.
Well, okay, so and then this is a really specific question, but the scissors that have like the comb on one side, what do those do differently?
So those are they're technically called thinning shears, but it doesn't necessarily thin the hair. It just cuts every like 10 hairs. Okay. It'll cut like 2 hairs.
Oh.
So it's like taking a comb and like separating the hair where it only cuts like what's on the top of the comb.
I see.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it only cuts like every couple hairs.
Yeah.
That's why when people cut with that and they're cutting like really close, like to like take weight out, and you're like, whoa, wait a second. Like I don't want my hair that short. It's not cutting the hair. Yeah. It's only cutting like every one out of 10 hairs.
Interesting.
Depending on what size scissors you have.
Yeah. So it's a really like a whole.
Yeah. And hairdressing shears can be very expensive,
right? What's like the most expensive shears that you've invested
they could probably be like, me?
Or that you've seen someone invest in?
I mean, hair cutting shears could be anywhere from like $1,500 to like $25,000.
Yeah.
It just depends like where it's coming from.
Crazy.
And that's why when you get them sharpened.
Yeah.
Like
it's really important. Like someone needs to do it the right way. Yeah.
Yeah. You can ruin them like super easily.
I mean, someone could have an entire business just being like hairdressing, sharpening.
They do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Huh. They do. It's rare because it's really hard.
Yeah.
But they do. There are guys that do it. My dad did it and he was like, it's hard.
Yeah. It's like a whole, and high stakes too. It's not just like, oh, I'm going to sharpen someone's like paring knife and they're going to cut apples with it. It's like,
yeah. And usually they're doing like the back of a truck, but it takes like hours and it's tough because it's like you have to get the right angle. It has to be like smooth. It has to fit the other side. Yeah. So yeah.
Well, okay. I feel like I got to check my time here. Yeah, we're kind of, I feel like we could obviously.
We've been talking for like 10 minutes.
Talk for like a bazillion years. But I'd love to, we are a company that's really obsessed with confidence and communication and how those two things kind of feed each other. From where you stand now as a business owner, managing other people, also, you're a mom, your son just turned a year, you're married and you're taking care of your marriage. You're also just like a really lovely, like you have meaningful friendships. Like you are a thoughtful family member. You are charitable. You've worked with CHOC, which is like the Children's Hospital of Orange County, the Glass Slipper Guild for how many years now?
I think I'm going on my 5th year.
Yeah. So it's like you make time for a lot of things really gracefully. Do you have any kind of things that you live by, ways that you structure your day, like go-to wisdoms that you could identify?
Yeah, so something that my dad always told me when I was growing up is that you always need to have like a work and then like a life balance. So my dad was like such a hard worker, and I feel like that's definitely where I get it from. He always told me like you have to have work and play balance. So work really hard, but also you have to equal it out with like having fun. Or equal it out with like being home with your family. It's work-life balance, right? Or work play. Yeah. Yeah. And he's always ingrained that in me. He was always like, you burn the candle at both ends, but you do that at work as well.
Yeah.
So if you're going to work really hard, you need to take a step back or else you're going to burn out on one or the other.
Well, I think that if you're not mindfully making time for both work and life or play or whatever you call it, the one that you're not making time for consciously will get lost.
Right.
Like because the other one will take over. It's like it really has to be, it's not just like, oh, balance, and I'm like a balanced person and I'm just dialing back on one side. It's like, no, you have to be consciously making time for the other thing and being aware of like the fact that like, okay. And I think that as a mom, so many of my mom friends share in this sentiment that it's like in life anywhere, whether you're 4 years old or 50, anytime you choose to take time doing something, you're choosing to not do other things, and we don't realize it's like called opportunity cost in economics.
Right.
But as a mom, it's so much more apparent because it's like, okay, if I'm choosing to work today, like I'm not with my kid, or not only that, I have to find someone to take care of my kid, or I'm not doing this thing at home or whatever it is. It's like, I feel like those stakes get even higher. So having that clarity of choice where it's like, okay, if there is a day that like I'm choosing not to work, I'm choosing to dial back these obligations so I can be with my family. It's like, okay, then I should be all in, know?
I've actually like gained a new respect for the work-life balance because becoming a mom, before I was a mom, I worked almost 6 days a week, 8+ hours a day. I just work was my life.
Yeah.
Obviously it was my baby. The salon was my baby. And so I put all my time and energy into it all day because nothing else to do other than play. And I played hard on the weekends, and stuff. And, but now being a mom, I think that I've actually like brought my passion back from the very beginning of my career when I was just starting, when I wasn't packing my days so tight and I had more time to like focus on one client at a time, because now I'm only working 2 days a week and I'm at home with my baby every other day. And so it's really nice because when I go to work, I get a break from my life at home and I get to focus on my clients and take my time with them. And so it's bringing this passion back into me where I'm like, I really do love what I do. And it would be really hard for me to just stop. And so it's bringing this passion back into me where I'm like, I really do love what I do. And it would be really hard for me to just stop.
Yeah.
Because I go to work and I'm loving like going through the process with my clients again and like getting to know them again, and like slowing down a bit at work has brought my passion back so much.
I think that's so interesting how you kind of you compare that to the beginning stages, and tapping back into like the reasons why you started down this path in the first place, and really that fundamental like, that aha moment that you had where it's like, how can I make people really feel something,
right,
and see themselves a certain way and walk out, after being in the chair and just have a new start and a fresh take, on wherever they're going and whatever they're off to do.
Yeah, like in the beginning, I was just doing hair for free because I just wanted to do it. I wanted to learn. I wanted to get the person in my chair. And now I feel like I could do it for free again.
Yeah.
Because I just like,
because it's by choice.
Because I'm like choosing to be there and I'm liking what I'm doing. And it's become more enjoyable, being a mom. And then I get to go home, be with my son, and the next day I get to wake up and I don't have to go to work. I just get to play with my son all day.
Yeah.
And so, being a mom's really hard and it's a entirely like whole nother job, but I love it. And I love having these 2 jobs now.
Well, you're doing a beautiful job at it. And I think this has been so fun to really kind of like dive into the details and like every step in the process and where was your head in each moment. And I think it's so helpful for someone to kind of hear, that inside perspective where it's not just like, I'm going to Google how to become a hairstylist and see the steps written out, but really hear it firsthand from someone and like there's hesitations and that, oh, that's a discomfort moment. And I had to just keep going. And my curiosity and my why you might connect to this career path in the first place beyond just like, oh, like my hair, I'm good at doing my own hair, but like, what's your why really? And like, is that something that's going to sustain you through all these different levels of training and entrepreneurship? And then going back and managing that work-life balance was you're starting your own family. We always, because I don't want to keep here all night because you do have that little family to get back to. But we like to do kind of a fast 5 questions, and then we always end with the same question.
Okay.
We're sitting here in person today, which is so fun. I mean, talk about like new things. We usually do most of our recordings remotely. So I'm going to go totally off script on my fast 5, and we'll just go for it. Number 1, so you are married to my brother-in-law, Greg,
Yes.
your husband. What is one thing that you think really sustains your relationship?
I think Greg and I's communication is amazing. I think it's gotten even stronger now that we've had a son together, because I think that will really test your relationship.
Yep.
So I think that is one thing.
Number 2, what is your favorite like hair style or color to do?
Right now I'm really loving the highlights.
Highlights like a blonde.
I'm loving doing blondes right now.
Do you like a long hair blonde or a short hair blonde?
A long hair blonde.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm
You'll-
really
like a
enjoying
lot of
that
a
right
palette.
now. Yeah.
This will be number 3. What is like the most trending hair look right now on the market?
Probably like a lived-in blonde with like some long highlight, like long layers.
So
Like
sort of like
bouncy,
she doesn't
like
care.
90s.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
a
But like lived in, so like a little grown out look, but
oh.
not fully grown out look.
She doesn't have to be in the salon chair like every
Yeah, but
3
she
weeks on
keeps
the
her blonde
day,
really
but
bright.
like she's not lazy.
Yeah,
She's
And her-
busy.
and her ends are bouncing.
Her ends are
Yeah.
bouncing like big 90s
Yeah.
bouncing blowout.
Yeah,
I love that. I'll never experience the blonde, but like
but
she's like a
you could still have bouncy
animal.
blowout hair. Yeah.
Definitely. I
We
need
used
to
call it
learn.
soccer mom hair.
So
We used to.
yes.
It's not soccer mom hair anymore.
Now it's probably, like,
now I have a whole
canceled.
new respect for soccer mom hair.
Yeah. Okay. What am I? I'm on number 4.
Sure.
Number 4, best piece of advice someone has given you in the industry.
Honestly, this is something that's stuck with me forever, and this is totally random. But when Lindsay told me that if you don't cry, it's not going to be worth it, I think that if I didn't cry, it wouldn't have been worth it,
Yeah.
because it really pushed me.
Well, and it showed you it was important to you
Yeah.
too. Like if it's worth crying about,
Yeah.
it's probably important to you.
Yeah, and I
you
honestly
know?
think about it all the time. All the time. I remember those words coming out of her mouth.
I love
And
that.
this had to have been like 12, 13 years ago.
It's such a good piece of
14 years ago.
advice. It's such because it's like it takes something that you might think in your head is like negative, like why am I crying?
She was also showing me that it was important, and what I was
Yes.
learning was important.
Yeah.
And yeah,
And it kind of like reframes it, like makes you think about like, oh no, like this is part of the process, and this is like these are the stakes. The stakes are high because this is like what I want to do.
Yeah.
I love that. In acting school, I still do. I get nervous when like I'm about to give a speech. Like I love speaking in public. I love hosting shows and podcasts and stuff. But like when I get nervous, someone told me to like take the word nervous and like all the things we associate with nervous, like the clammy hands and the elevated heart rate and the flushed cheeks and all the things, and just realize that like that's your body physiologically getting ready to be in a peak state.
right.
You know,
Exactly.
so it's actually like your body isn't betraying you by doing all these things. Your body is recognizing that something's important to you and getting ready to serve you in the moment in the best way your body possibly
And
can.
that's when you grow.
Yes,
That's when you grow.
totally.
And you move on. And 100%.
That
I
it's
agree with
like
that.
oh, this isn't a bad thing. I'm not like this isn't embarrassing that I'm nervous. It's like, oh wow, this is important to me. Cool.
Yeah.
Let's keep going.
Yeah.
Okay, so number 5, when you're working, do you prefer to be talking with someone the entire time that you're cutting their hair, or would you rather just work in total silence?
I think it's a mixture of both.
Depends on the person, probably.
It
right?
totally depends on the person, but it's a mixture of both. So
Yeah.
another piece of advice, but this is more of a piece of advice for like a hairdresser,
Mhm.
is someone told me to never talk about yourself, but to an extent.
Yeah.
You know, don't start the conversation about yourself and don't end the conversation about yourself.
Mm.
You need to talk about the person sitting in your chair.
Yeah.
I've been pretty private with my clients. I mean, they know enough about me,
Yeah.
but I don't sit and talk about like a lot of my personal life. Like I don't
Yeah.
talk about my relationships, and I don't,
It's kind of like their moment
Yeah.
while they're in the
yeah.
chair.
So, I mean, I like talking, But there's a fine balance there.
Yeah.
Like, let's talk for 10 minutes. You're going to be in my chair for 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
Let's talk for 10 minutes, 20 minutes. We're going to talk here and there. I'm going to ask you 10 times how you're doing. What do you want? And we can talk. But if you're talking for 2.5 hours,
you're like, okay, I'm not your therapist.
I don't think, I mean, you pick and choose, and you
Yeah.
know who wants to talk and who doesn't want to talk. And you can, after doing hair for 18 years, I can gauge on when to stop talking. And
I'm sure for some people, they're probably just like, this is my time to just turn off.
Totally.
And I just want to kind of fall asleep.
And some people just say that when they come in, and then you just, that's great.
Or I'm going to be on my phone doing emails or whatever it is.
And sometimes you just don't have anything to talk about.
Yeah. You're like, okay, I'm just going to do my thing. Have music in the salon on and call it a day. Okay. Well, our final question is not part of the Fast Five, but we always like to ask, what is one thing about yourself when you were really young that maybe you didn't see or take pride in back then, but you appreciate now that you look back?
I think for me is I always was trying to take care of other people. And I was always trying to help someone or be there for someone. And I don't think I realized how much I did that until now. And I think that even showed a lot with having a baby. And I don't think I realized like how much I would have loved that, or like, you know, helping people feel good. I also didn't realize, like, I mean, that's obviously like what I wanted to do, but I get this from my mom. It's like I always was trying to help out the person who probably didn't want my help. And I always sometimes like felt bad for the wrong person, you know, like I always felt bad for a lot of people, and I was always trying to help them out. And it was like, no, Jessica, just take a step back. Like everyone, they're going to be okay.
Yeah.
I still find myself doing that sometimes.
Yeah.
I'm like, I feel bad. Like, no.
Yeah. Like I don't have to take this role for everybody. Like there's going to be a lot of people that you genuinely do have to take care of.
Taking care of people.
Yeah.
I think that's something that I didn't realize when I was younger.
Yeah. It's part of who you are.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, Jess, thank you so much for coming over.
This has been great.
And sharing your story. I loved this. And obviously, you know, in all settings can talk to you for hours, but this was such a treat to share your story and just all your gifts and your personality with the podcast. Yeah. I'll talk to you soon.
Yes.